What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Max Caufield and Life is Strange Double Exposure. So I really just want to look directly at her and talk about if Deck 9 did a good job with her. Now, I think this is a pretty polarizing topic, not to bring Life is Strange terms into it, but, I think people are going to have a pretty big variety of opinions on this one. So I definitely want to hear from you guys, in the comments. Let me know what you think about Max and if they did Max correctly. And, obviously, like, the quality of the whole game probably like gets in there and like muddies things up, I guess, depending on the person that you are, right? But I'm gonna try to keep this just on Max. Now, you might be surprised to hear, based off of other videos I've done, and specifically like kind of where the franchise is going is something I've had like the biggest issue with, but I actually think I would side with them in this video. Now, we'll see. Sometimes I talk myself into actually thinking the opposite, in these type of videos, but I would say right now, and I think I've kind of held this as it went, and that's kind of why I wanted to go with this opinion. I do feel like that was Max Caufield, okay? I said that after episodes 1 and 2. I said that initially after I beat the game, right after I did chapters 3 through 5. I feel like when Max is on screen, they get her. Now, again, like the story and stuff comes in and all that jazz, but like her herself, the personality, what she's saying, I do feel like they do get Max Caufield. Now, there's some things here and there, like, her ability to really jump on like Amanda, right? Like if you romance Amanda, the speed that Max is willing to take that relationship doesn't really feel in line. Actually, number one, it's very different than Vin, which I actually kind of think is funny, but it's just, I don't know, it's very fast, and I don't know if Max Caufield would do it. Another specific kind of point that I've, kind of called out before is when you pick Chloe, if you pick like Chloe survived, and you're going through and the Safi stuff towards the very end, and it's when they're on the observatory, and Max really does kind of like the moral, kind of like the background history of her, right? Where she talks about, what these powers have done to her and kind of the consequences or ramifications of them. And, a lot of that stuff can be good. And again, there's times I think they really nail it. But she says things where it's like, if I basically had a chance to redo it, I would redo it. Like, I would save those lives. And it's like, those moments I think are some of the biggest times where I don't really think they, got Max, where I think they were kind of inserting, hey, we don't really think that choosing Chloe is the morally good choice. We kind of think you should pick the other ones. So Max is going to be so burdened. Now, here's the thing. She really would be burdened, right? Like if you picked one person over a town, that's that moral dilemma that you're thinking of when you're making that choice in Life is Strange. But I don't know, just the way she said it felt off character. I mean, I guess that's the easiest way of saying it. But you know what? And I've said this before too. Then you fast forward to like the Safi thing at the very, very end. Now, having her accept or refuse, I don't really like, right? Because I think accepting it is just not in Max's character if you accept Safi's, proposal to you. But what she says up until that point, in either choice, I really think is Max, right? Where it's like, okay, here's everything we've learned, and we know that doing these things with these powers like lead to you cannot just do them, right? There's always a consequence. And now, okay, biasness, that was something I talked about leading into this game. So I actually felt like and this is maybe cliche, maybe not, I felt like the developers heard me. I feel like they put my own words into Max's writing, and it's like, oh yeah, Max would actually say that, because I've been saying that about her, for like 4 months. Actually, I've been saying that about her for like 9 years, but it is what it is. So, I mean, I guess there's that contrast, right? There are some times where she says some stuff, or again, kind of the speed with Amanda and stuff. But at the same time, you know what? She's grown up. Like, this is her much older. Well, I mean, 10 years. But you know what? You change a lot. you can evolve. You can change. And, one thing I do actually think they really nailed on, that they actually emphasized too leading in, is that confidence, right? Like, this and maybe that's another reason why I do think this really does feel like Max. You can tell where she's come from with like that shy insecurity stuff and where she is now. She is now like the most outspoken person, right? Like, I mean, like you could do that thing with Lucas, when he does like the memorial service basically for Safi. Like, that's the closest that Max gets to just like intense confrontation, like stepping over somebody and, kind of insulting them to a large group of people and, kind of laying out what Safi would have wanted, right? All that stuff. I mean, that's maybe the most extreme of like what Max is capable of now, but mostly, she still has, I think, that inner shyness, but you can tell she's kind of grown. She's grown from it. She knows like where to pick her battles. She is more outspoken. She's not so insecure. She's not so quieted, right? Like at least me, I don't know about you, I can feel that in Max throughout these chapters. And honestly, it's moments like that and it's themes like that I do think they, get it. I also think that's also kind of been discussed a little bit. The general idea of chapter 5, her kind of not getting over, but like actually understanding what happened to her and getting through it. While I don't think they did it well, and I think it was, discount versions of the nightmare sequences, we've talked about that before. I think her literal arc to understanding and getting through it, I do think that actually worked, right? Like, she comes out of that when she goes to talk to Safi and when she's basically freeing Safi, right? All that, which is kind of the second half of the nightmare sequence, right? She comes out of it with that, like, almost, I don't even want to say confidence, but just like that awareness where it's like, what happened. And, there's a difference between running away from it and then like actually like meeting it head on and saying like, hey, these things happened, and it doesn't have to be like okay that they happen, but like, you have to be able to get through it. You have to be able to either hold it within yourself or talk to people, whatever it might end up being, but you got to be able to work through these things. And, for the longest time she ran away. And, I know that line has been a thing people have talked about as well. If Arcadia Bay is destroyed, she has to run away. Like, where's she going to go to? Arcadia Bay is literally just rubble, right? But, the idea that she runs away, almost a metaphor, not even necessarily like actually what happened, that she runs away from these things, right? The Chloe thing, I guess, separating it, but, like that stuff kind of running away from, retreating, right? Like leaving those situations. She doesn't want to confront them. That is something I can actually see her doing in between, say, 1 and this, because, like, what we kind of know from her and Chloe in 1, with her leaving to Seattle, she, I don't think she did that maliciously, as we kind of see in the farewell episode and other things, but, she did do it. She does have a habit, or she's capable of doing that stuff. She's capable of kind of pushing things out, and especially when you have, like, the trauma that she would have after Life is Strange, it's fair to assume that somebody would push those things away versus kind of embracing it and working through it, right? So, I know I'm spending so much time on this stuff, but I think it's important because, like, all those themes, I actually do think they nailed. See, it's almost a question of, like, did they nail the ideas and did they nail the execution? See, the execution is where it gets a whole lot more messy, right? Because you have these specific kind of moments I was mentioning, or you have, like, how they're showing certain things happening to her. But I think, like, general ideas of Max, I do think they kind of got. And again, like, there's definitely times that it doesn't really sound or I'm not saying like the voice, like, when it comes to Hannah Tell and stuff, that obviously helps. See, if Hannah Tell did not come back, this would be a whole lot harder. And honestly, I'm willing to say this, I'll call myself out, right? There might be some biasness, right? Because, like, I think Hannah Tell, she's amazing, but she's also got such a unique voice that, like, when you hear it, it's like you kind of are in the default where it's like, yeah, that has to be Max, right? When you hear the voice in the trailer, you immediately know it's Max before you even see her, right? And then, like, seeing her, everybody kind of went through that arc of, like, okay, is this actually what she would look like? And, with the engine change and just the visual change, but, like, that voice is so unique and so specific. And although she does sound a lot more like Ashley Johnson now than, like, she did 10 years ago, but it still has that uniqueness. When you hear it, you hear Max, if you're into this Life is Strange fandom, right? So, okay, does that blind me a little bit? Sure. If you want to say, Alex, you're kind of just blinded by the voice of Max, and that just makes it feel like Max all the time. I'm willing to give you that. But honestly, though, I do think there's more to it, but that doesn't hurt it. In fact, it's necessary because, like I said, if you don't have her coming back, even if it looks semi-like her and that acts semi-like her, if it doesn't sound like her at all, you'd have a huge, huge problem. So obviously having Hannah there and, having those mannerisms that we've talked about, kind of leading into the game, and I think it was reflected in the game. She does kind of, look, Max in the original doesn't have as many facial expressions because it's just not as detailed, but a lot of that stuff I do think still is transferred. And then obviously Hannah's voice has helped it massively. But, I got to be real, especially, and I think as time has gone on, I've settled kind of on certain opinions, of this game. I don't change too much, or at least right now I haven't changed too much of what I feel. But in terms of, like, Is that Max Caufield? I really think I'm willing to say yes, overwhelmingly. Not 1,000% or 100% again, to not exaggerate. Not every time. And there's definitely things, like in between, like, when you go in between Life is Strange 1 and Double Exposure, that maybe they didn't get it so much. And again, like, for me, it's more about, okay, well, did they execute the themes and like the personality quirks and like things like that make Max, right? Did they do that versus was it necessary? Now you could ask yourself that question, right? Like, did they need to have Max in this game? That's a different question. Do you need to see more of Max in general? Did you need to make this game, period, right? Even if you wanted to have Max as the protagonist, did you need to have it in general? Like, those are fair questions. I'm not saying you can't ask those, but those are different questions. I think that this was Max. Like, I'm not gonna play this and say, nope, don't recognize that character whatsoever. There's times and there's elements, but I think as a whole, that still is her. Now, again, like going forward and stuff, especially because my biggest gripe, like I said earlier, my biggest thing with Max in terms of like character assassination or leaning in that direction is accepting Safi's proposal at the end. I think that just goes kind of against everything that makes Max as a character. So actually, if you pick that, then I would say, did they nail Max? Well, it's a little bit more shaky. If you refuse it, I think that's more in line. But, again, I've gone over that kind of discussion before where it's like, should Deck 9 have even allowed us to pick something like that, right? Like, is that something negotiable in Max's personality where she could negotiate with herself picking yes or no, right? And I say no. I don't think that's like something that should even be up for us to decide. I think that should just be Max saying, nope, we're not going to do that. You just said you're a villain. You compared yourself to God. You said you're going to like bend the world to like your will and all that stuff. Like, no. That's not how powers work. I just told you that. We're not doing it. That's how I look at the ending, and the fact that you can choose accept. Okay, well, that might not necessarily be Max Caufield, but personally, I did not pick that choice. So, we'll see how that plays out in future games if they start to stray more and more from like what makes Max. I mean, I'll tell you this, she's not a villain at all. Okay, so if they experiment with Max going off the deep end, I'm not going to be, I guess I'll be around for it, for the discussions, but I will not be in support of it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.